Once you throw out that accusation, it becomes only a matter of time until you do the DNA test. Because once you throw it out,
Yes.
you've already look. You've if a woman is going to feel insulted, she's already going to feel insulted. I mean, you've already gone there.
Yeah.
Whatever is going to happen at this point, and it can be unfair when the woman says, "I've done nothing wrong. I shouldn't have to prove my fidelity to you," is one argument. Okay, but 10 out of 10 men are going to say the same thing. Madam, if you have nothing to hide, let's run this DNA test.
Precisely. Precisely. Totally agree with
If you
you.
have nothing to hide, let's run this test.
Yes.
It'll be tough once you raise those questions to come back on. You don't trust me. No, I don't trust you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
And
a. Is it? Sorry, you're saying.
no, no, no. I mean, yeah, if you have nothing to hide, then do the test. Do the test.
Do
Because
the test.
the only thing that is 100% certain is that the mother is the mother. That's 100% certain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's not in doubt. I mean, she's the one that pushed out the baby, whether through cesarean or through a natural birth. Is 100% certain. It's we guys that need to wonder whether maybe not. But a woman is 100% certain, which is why there's no
100%.
maternity fraud. There's never going to be a maternity fraud, only a paternity fraud, which is
Unless
the
something
topic of
untoward
today.
happens. Yeah, unless something untoward happens in the hospital, and that's usually without the woman's knowledge. Ah,
And that's not paternity fraud.
and
So
that's
that's
not
something,
paternity fraud.
yeah,
That's something
that's
completely different.
completely different. Yeah.
Well,
So go ahead, go ahead.
from the time that the man says, "I want a DNA test," it's a ticking time bomb.
Mm.
Because at this point, you've already let the genie out of the bottle. You've already said, "I don't trust you."
So now let's circle back
Mhm,
before you can get to a point, right?
mhm.
Before you can get to a point that you will look at your wife or your significant other and say, "I want a DNA test." What has been going through your mind?
Something is wrong.
Thank you.
Although these days, do you know something? I think that view is outdated. These days, it's becoming more and more the default for people to have DNA tests, even when it is glaring that the child is theirs. I recall a
Mm,
friend of mine telling me about having done a DNA test, and I was like, I looked at his baby, like the first few pictures taken in her first hour of life, and I remember
mm.
seeing the baby and thinking, this guy must be mad. This is you now. This is you. These are your features. And he said, yeah, I had no doubt, but I'm going to check just in case. So, and that's a
Yeah.
man that's very, very sure. He's very certain of what he's doing. And there are people these days who just do it as a matter of course. Say, look, you know what? We're going to do it. I don't want stories that touch.
So what let's conclude on this. What do you think is the remedy for this, if there is any? How can men protect themselves from paternity fraud? And how can we learn from this? I mean, this particular case is sub judice, is still in court. So, but
We
there are
can't really
thousands
say
of
much about
cases
it.
that
Yeah.
have been verified
Settled.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
settled, in family court. Which is not. We haven't brought that up because this actually came out a couple of days ago. But just to conclude, what can our viewers learn from this?
Yeah, I mean, before we even conclude, I keep thinking about how rampant this thing was decades, maybe centuries ago. Okay.
Okay.
And that if not for medical science, that's made it easier to catch people out.
Hmm.
Do you know how many cases there were 40, 50, 60 years ago?
Salami, let me bust your brain. They have been discovering paternity fraud from the 1920s. So I did some research on this from the
Mm.
1920s. Now, how is it from the 1920s? You wonder, huh? 1920s, how come? DNA test wasn't available then? Yes, it wasn't. But the doctor that introduced the blood tests, you know how we have blood tests, O positive, A or
So it's your
SS.
blood
Yeah,
group.
so
So
the
it's your
blood
blood
group
type.
is the
So it's
blood
your
group I'm
blood
talking
type. Yeah.
about. So doctors knew.
Mm.
So when the dad has a certain blood group and the mom has a certain blood group, and the baby comes up with a blood group that cannot scientifically be a match, they knew. So that was
Mm-hmm.
the first
Mm-hmm.
way they knew back in those days. And I heard
Mm-hmm.
about stuff like that even from doctors, from family doctors that I know, that have told me even before the DNA thing became like, widespread, etc. So that's how they knew that. And then the DNA, and then DNA now became more developed, and they started to use it to establish paternity. So this has been ongoing,
For a
but
long time. Yeah.
yeah. So why? I mean, not why. What can be done? Just to conclude, what can men do to? And this is the men's channel. So what do you think men can do to protect
There,
themselves?
there are two things.
Okay.
From the personal perspective of a man, or from the individual perspective, insist on the DNA test when it's done. And you know what? This is
When you say
easier
when it's
said
done,
than
what do you mean?
done.
At birth
So
or when?
when at birth, sorry, what I meant to say was insist on the DNA test as soon as the child is born. So at birth. But this thing is easier said than done. There's so many reasons why, if it's an
Can
elective
we
test,
can we circle back?
yeah,
I'm going to add to your suggestion. Can we circle back that it can be discussed within courtship before they marry to
yeah,
say,
yeah,
I
good
have an
point, good
intention
point,
to do this? And if there's
yeah,
any kind of pushback, you know straight away from the time you're dating, serious dating leading to marriage, and she tells you, I'm not comfortable with what you've said. That sounds insulting to me. And you're like, okay, okay. It's a deal breaker for me, oh, but for you it's an insult. And that's fine. Two things can exist in the same sentence and in the same world. I
yeah,
think leaving it late can be okay. You waited all this while. I've known you for 5, 6 years. You never said this. All of a sudden, I pop out a baby, and now you want to do this. So I'm just thinking. I'm thinking out loud. I'm not looking at it from another perspective to say, okay, why can these things? These are things that you should talk about in courtship, perhaps. And but like you
yeah.
said earlier, it's difficult. But what do you
You know,
think?
it's also one of those things that you're not likely. I didn't avert my mind to it until I was a married man. I don't
Hmm,
think it's one of those things that a 25-year-old or 30-year-old is necessarily thinking about. So how do
I
you
agree. I agree. I agree. I
how do you
agree.
plan for something that you can't comprehend? But the world is changing,
Hmm.
and with the advent of so much information, the information age, I think men are now more aware. I think you're likely to get a father telling his son that let your wife know before you marry her that you're going to do a DNA test on your children.
Hmm.
I mean, I imagine so.
Hmm.
Look, I've also been, I know it's very tough. If it's an elective procedure, it's very tough. I have been in the labor room with my wife when our kids were born. And in the immediate aftermath, when they're asking me to sign the birth certificate, and they're telling me, oh, the law in this state, in this particular state, is that once that we're obligated to let you know before you sign the birth certificate, that once you sign this, you're on the hook for the
Hmm.
next 18 years,
Yep.
regardless of the DNA test later prove that the child is not yours. Eh. So
So this.
you have a right to tick a box that says, I want to have DNA testing, or I tick a box that says, I am aware that I have a right to demand DNA testing. I have been counseled that I have a right to demand DNA testing. However, I have waived my right to DNA testing and the consequences. And what even if those consequences mean that a court might find later that I'll be liable for child support, even if child is not my own.
Hmm.
So it's like they've given you, but look, I've been in the labor room when the woman has just popped that baby out, and you're overjoyed, you're overwhelmed with emotion to see your child. You're also aware that this woman is tired. If she's had a natural birth, she's pushed. She's been in labor for however long it was.
Hours.
If
Yeah.
she had a cesarean, she's going to be in pain. She's had
Yes.
like 7 layers of skin cut open to bring a human being out of her. and then that bit's been stitched back. I mean, it's a lot. So I think you'd appear pretty callous if the
And at
first time
that
you're bringing up
point,
that issue, that's the first time you're raising that issue is there and then. Nah, man, that woman will kick you in the head.
and that's why I brought that suggestion to your point earlier. But then,
I agree with
you
you.
know, your own point as well is very valid. That at the age, especially the age, they're not marrying at our age; they're marrying for the first time. You know, maybe late 20s,
25,
early
30,
30s.
35.
They're not going to be. But like you said, things are also changing. That's a suggestion. Any other suggestions to maybe red flags you spot to say patterns? I don't know. Yeah.
It's a Yemi, go Yemi. But hey,
And on that note,
on that note,
we're gonna end today's episode. We hope you liked this particular episode. Give us a like. We like to see your likes. When you subscribe, please click on all notifications so that every single episode comes directly to your phone or your preferred device where you're watching from. And please share it on all social media platforms. We are looking to grow, and leave comments, please. If you agree with the topic, you don't agree with the topic, just leave a comment. We'd like to read all your comments.
shoot us
Uh,
an email.
yes, at two grown men at gmail.com. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you very much for watching.
Cheers.
Gracias. Eshe pupo.
Godabo.
Dalu.
Out.
Machifo.